Welcome to Through the Bible with Pastor Michael, a podcast from First Baptist Church in Mustang, Oklahoma. Here's Pastor Michael.
All right, continuing today through 2 Kings as we are looking at 2 Kings 12, 13, and 14. And what this part of the scripture is doing here is it's going back and forth between the kings of the south and the kings of the north, telling you what's happening. And so sometimes it will describe here's the king of Israel, and here's what he's doing, and this happens at the time of this king, the king of the south, and then the king of the south dies, and so it'll say, here's the king of the south, and here's what he's doing during this reign of the king of the north. And so it's going back and forth between who these kings are. So let's just stop for a minute and give just a super fast review of what we've already covered. In the United Kingdom, there were three kings that we would consider in the United Kingdom: Saul, David, Solomon. That kingdom divides in 931. To the north goes the group the 10 tribes, and so that would be Israel. To the south is Judah, and largely of Benjamin, and so we would have two kingdoms now. Israel to the north, capital of Samaria. Judah to the south, capital is Jerusalem. And what we have now are all of these kings of the north, kings of the south. And someone's a king, they die, someone takes their place. Someone's a king, they die, someone takes their place. And so if it sounds like, man, we're just jumping back and forth, well, that's what it's doing, is it's just helping you know who the kings were of the north and the south, Israel and Judah. And then letting you know not just what's going on in Israel, for example, but also what's happening in Judah at the same time. Every time a king dies, someone takes their place, and that's happening in both kingdoms. Sometimes those kingdoms fight against each other, as we read about in chapter 14 today. So they're separate kingdoms that still have connectivity with each other. Sometimes there's foreign kings that come and want to fight against both Israel and Judah. Sometimes Israel and Judah fight against each other. And then, as we see in the reading today, the names get very confusing. And we even have an example where there's a king in the south and eventually a king by the same name in the north. And so, as I say often, it's helpful. Just get a piece of paper and a pen and just write down each name you come across. Here's the name, here's who he is, here's what he did. Just in short summary form, so you can strive to try to keep separate in your mind who is who and why these individual names matter to us. Okay, so with that, let's look at 5 observations from chapter 12, 13, and 14. Number 1, Joash was king of Judah, and Jehoiada was the priest. And Joash, while he's king, happens at 7 years old, reigns for 40 years. And while you've got Joash the king and you've got Jehoiada his priest, during that time you see reform coming to the people. And Joash begins to repair the temple. So that's the first thing that we see. It's this coupling of Joash the king and of Jehoiada the priest. Joash becomes king at age 7, rules for 40 years. During that time, you see spiritual reforms take place, as well as they begin to do work on the temple. Number 2, when Hazael, the king of Syria, wanted to fight Jerusalem, so that's the south, that's Judah, Joash then gave him treasures. So they've been collecting money and collecting these treasures to repair the temple. When the king of Syria comes to fight against Jerusalem, against Judah, that southern kingdom, Joash gave the king of Syria treasures. And so the servants of Joash, the king there, rise up and they kill him. They kill Joash the king. Then third, we see that under Jehoiaz, Israel does evil, and God allows Syria to continually oppress them. And then his son Jehoash follows him and also does evil. So this is helpful for us, because what we see here with that second observation is that the king of Syria wanted to fight Jerusalem. Our third observation is that the king of Israel to the north does wicked, and so the Lord allows Syria to oppress them. So Syria has come after the south and come after the north. Fourth observation is that Elisha dies and is buried. That happens at the end of chapter 13. And then a fifth observation, Amaziah becomes king in Judah after his father Joash is killed, and Amaziah has his servants killed that killed his father. So earlier we read about how the servants rise up against Joash and they kill him. After Joash dies, his son becomes king, and that king now goes after the servants who had assassinated his father. Okay, so a bit of a web to try to untangle, to figure out exactly who is who and what they're doing. But hopefully that helps a little bit to think through these three chapters. Now, applications for us. Number one, live so people know you follow the Lord. Let it be said of you when your life is over that he followed the Lord. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to have flaws. But let people know by your life, by your words, by the way you treat people, by how you handle defeat, by how you handle success, that you followed the Lord. Let it be said at your funeral one day, without equivocation, that you followed the Lord. It's interesting, we see these kings' lives summarized in just a short statement often. He followed the Lord. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Let your life be lived in such a way that it's clear and evident to everyone that you follow the Lord. Second, do your work honestly. Do your work honestly. It says in chapter 12, they did not ask for an accounting from the men into whose hand they delivered the money to pay out to the workmen, for they dealt honestly. Let that be true of you. Do your work honestly. Don't try to take advantage of people. Don't try to make more money off of someone than is fair. Pay your bills. If someone does a service for you, pay to them what they owe. Let your word be trusted. If you give a promise, keep it. Do honest work. Do honest work every day with whatever you're called and gifted to do. Treat people in the right way and do honest things. Number three, learn from those older than you and avoid repeating their mistakes. We see today an example of a king who follows in the footsteps of his predecessor and just keeps doing the same wicked things. Instead, what we want to do is look at those older than us, leaders ahead of us, our parents who are older than us, our siblings who are older than us, and learn from them and avoid repeating the mistakes that they made. Now, we don't have to be disrespectful about it, but we ought to recognize, look, this is someone who's doing things that's not right, and we can avoid that. We want to learn from those who go before us and avoid their mistakes. Number four, the flip side of that coin, pass down your faith to those younger than you. Gather those near to you and tell them the stories of God's faithfulness in your life. Pass that down to them. Tell them how you trust the Lord and why you trust the Lord. Tell them how the Lord has been strong for you. Tell them how the Lord has proven himself to you over and over again. Pass down the stories to the next generation. So what you want to do, whatever you're doing, however you live, whatever your life situation is, wherever you work, here's what you want to do. Look at those older than you, above you, further along than you. Learn from them. Avoid repeating their mistakes. Take what you've learned from the Lord and then pass that down to those who are coming up after you. And then a fifth application: do not let success make you arrogant and self-reliant. I'm thinking here from chapter 14, when Amaziah, the king of Judah, threatens Joash, the king of Israel. Joash basically laughs him off and says that the king of Judah is full of himself, and he says he compares himself to a cedar and the king of Judah to a thistle, and he says basically, because you won this battle against Edom, you're now full of yourself, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to let our success ever make us arrogant or self-reliant. We want to stay humble, even in victory, and relying upon the Lord, not ourselves. And then a summary, we're reading Psalm 89, verses 1 to 18 today. The summary is, the Lord is the perfection of righteousness and justice, of steadfast love and faithfulness. And because he is, he's worthy of our praise and of our worship. Be blessed as you study today.